At my own graduation dinner, surrounded by relatives and family friends, my parents leaned across the polished table and calmly told me to hand over my entire inheritance to my sister, like my future was a resource they already owned. When I said no, my father lifted my diploma as if it were a napkin, clicked open a lighter, and murmured, "You never deserved your grandfather's money." The edges caught fire, curling into black ash while everyone watched. But I didn't cry. I didn't plead. I simply smiled, stood up, and walked away. Because what kept me steady that night wasn't something they could set on fire, and none of them had any clue what was coming the following week. My name is Cassidy Rivers, and for most of my life, I learned how to shrink myself at the dinner table not due to a lack of courage or opinions, but because, in my house, silence was the safest armor. Marcus and Elaine, my parents, adored the fantasy of a perfect family in Del Mar, the kind that belongs on glossy holiday cards. My younger sister, Victoria, fit that fantasy without effort. She was their golden girl, the one they posed for photos, the one they bragged about to strangers. I was the other daughter, the quiet one, the practical one, the one they routinely forgot to introduce unless someone reminded them I existed. Growing up, I always knew exactly where I stood. At 11, I dragged my robot project through the school gym alone because Dad had taken Victoria to an art showcase. At 15, I boarded an overnight bus to a science program while my parents escorted Victoria to a fashion event. And at 17, when I won a statewide scholarship, I searched the auditorium for their faces and found none, only my grandfather's, standing quietly in the back like he always did. Grandpa Lawson was the one person who truly saw me. He understood how my brain worked, understood that I didn't need to be loud to take up space. He taught me the small things: how to fix a circuit, how to read a contract, how to hold my boundaries without ever raising my voice. Silence, he'd say, can be a tactic, not a retreat. Maybe that's why I never pushed back when my mother brushed away my achievements with a polite nod, or when my father insisted Victoria had the brighter future. I told myself it didn't matter. I told myself I didn't need their applause. But the truth was more tangled. There were nights in my college dorm when I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering what it would feel like if just once my parents were proud of me. Not proud of how quiet I stayed or how little trouble I caused, but proud of the person I was becoming. I thought graduation night might finally be that moment. I pictured Marcus shaking my hand, Elaine pulling me into a photo, Victoria teasing me in that sloppy sibling way when cameras weren't watching. Instead, you already know what happened. Instead of celebration, we sat at a polished table beneath warm gold-washed lights, and I felt that familiar quiet fracture settle between us. Every question they asked about my new job carried a faint blade edge, as if they were waiting, hoping for me to slip and admit I wasn't worthy of it. Meanwhile, Victoria painted her future in sweeping, expensive strokes. New studios, international travel, creative opportunities, all of which somehow required my parents' wallets to function. Still, I pushed down the unease coiling low in my stomach. It was my graduation. For one night, I wanted peace. I wanted something close enough to a real family memory, something I could pretend to keep. But people reveal who they are when they believe they own you. And that night, my parents revealed everything. The tension didn't implode instantly. It gathered silently, like storm clouds thickening behind pleasant conversation. I saw it in the way Marcus kept touching his watch, in the tight pinch of Elaine's smile whenever someone congratulated me, and in the way Victoria reclined like she already possessed the entire evening. I tried to stay grounded. I answered questions about my software engineering offer with a practiced calm. I sipped water. I told myself I was imagining things, but beneath the linen tablecloth, beneath the rehearsed pleasantries, something felt wrong. A kind of rehearsed anticipation hung in the air, as if the three of them had practiced lines before stepping into the restaurant. It started when the panna cotta arrived. Marcus cleared his throat sharp, slicing through every conversation at the table. He reached into his leather bag, pulled out a brown folder, and slid it toward me with deliberate weight. "Skylar," he said, "this is important." Elaine folded her arms. Victoria tucked a golden curl behind her ear, smiling like she already knew exactly how this scene ended. I opened the folder just enough to see the corners. Financial statements, property records, a notarized form. My pulse spiked. I knew what this was. Marcus didn't warm up to the topic, he never does. "Your grandfather trusted you," he said, "but you already have a stable career. Victoria is just getting started." Then the line they always fall back on: "Sign the transfer so she can manage the inheritance." It's what family does. Family. Funny how that word only ever surfaced when they needed something from me. I kept my voice level. I'm not signing anything. Silence rippled across the table. Victoria blinked. Stunned, I dared to refuse out loud. Elaine's lips flattened into a razor-thin, judgmental line. Marcus leaned in, as if he thought he'd misheard. "Skylar," he said again, slower this time. "Don't be difficult. This is for the family," I repeated myself. No. 24 years. And it was the first time I'd ever told them no without shrinking afterward. Marcus's expression shifted confusion first, then irritation, then something far darker creeping into his eyes. "You don't understand what's at stake," Marcus said, but I did. For the first time, everything was painfully clear. When Victoria let out a small, dismissive scoff, the last thread holding me together snapped clean. She muttered, almost bored, "Come on, Skylar. You weren't even close with Grandpa. Why would he leave you anything real?" My throat tightened not with sadness, but with understanding. They had never seen me as anything except a placeholder, a source of quiet obedience, someone to extract emotional labor from whenever they needed it. I leaned back, kept my breathing even. "I'm not signing." That was the moment Marcus rose from his chair, pulled my diploma from his bag, and flicked a lighter open with a soft metallic snap. He met my eyes cold, confident, certain he still had the power to bend me. "You don't deserve your grandfather's money," he said. The blue flame kissed the corner of the paper. Gasps erupted through the restaurant as it curled, browned, and crumbled into ash. But inside me, something shifted, soft, steady, irreversible, not broken, awake. The fire should have shattered me. Should have sent me scrambling, trembling, begging the way he expected. Instead, as my diploma folded into darkness, a deep stillness washed over me like a lake settling after the wind stops. Guests whispered. Silverware clattered. Someone lifted their phone to record. Victoria's confident smile faltered, confusion flickering like a dying bulb. Elaine didn't move at all. She just watched me, waiting for me to break so she could call it being dramatic. But I didn't break. I watched the ashes fall onto the pristine tablecloth and felt weightless. Years of being sidelined, minimized, handled like a burden, all of it condensed into one sharp truth. There was nothing left here worth holding on to. Marcus looked almost disappointed that I wasn't crying. "This is what happens when you forget who supports you," he said. Funny, I couldn't recall a single moment they'd ever supported me. I stood slowly, smoothing the hem of my dress. "Are you done?" I asked. He blinked, thrown by my calmness. Victoria reached out like she might grab my arm. "Skylar, don't be dramatic." I stepped back before her hand touched me. Her gesture froze in midair. Then Elaine finally spoke, her voice low, cold enough to frost a glass. "If you walk out now, you're choosing to split this family." The irony nearly made me laugh. They broke this family long before I even knew how to spell my own name. I picked up my purse, placed my napkin neatly on the table, and looked at each of them one by one. "I'm not the one dividing anything," I said. "I'm just done pretending this is a family." Gasps rippled down the table again. But I wasn't doing this for them. I wasn't leaving for theatrics. I wasn't acting hurt. I was simply finished shrinking myself to fit their version of me. I turned and walked out of the restaurant, my heels tapping softly against the tile. No one followed. They were either too shocked, too proud, or most likely both. Outside, the night air wrapped around me, cool and damp, grounding me in a way nothing inside ever had. The street smelled faintly of fresh rain, cars sliding past in a steady hum. For the first time that evening, I could breathe. I ordered a ride, slipped into the back seat, and watched my reflection blur in the window. My eyes weren't swollen. My hands were steady. I looked like someone who had finally stopped chasing a love that was never going to exist. Aunt Riley's apartment in Hillcrest greeted me with dim, warm light. She'd left the door unlocked and set a mug beside the kettle chamomile tea waiting, like she somehow knew I'd need it. No interrogation. No pity. Just space. Later, lying on her couch, I replayed the night not with rage, but with understanding. Their cruelty wasn't impulsive. It was routine, practiced, expected. And yet, I hadn't crumbled. I'd simply smiled, stood, and walked away. Because deep down, I already knew something they didn't. What they had done at that table wasn't a finale. It was the mistake that made the truth impossible to bury anymore. And the following week, at the lawyer's office, they were finally going to see exactly how catastrophically they had underestimated me. The next morning, sunlight leaked through Aunt Riley's curtains, soft, warm, completely oblivious to the fact that my entire life had shifted overnight. I thought I'd wake up trembling, furious, maybe even grieving. Instead, I felt calm, steady in a way that made everything seem sharper, clearer. My phone vibrated nonstop. Victoria's messages arrived first short, smug, overflowing with entitlement. Thanks for the room, sis. I'm painting it blush pink. You don't mind, right? It's not like you ever cared about that house anyway. And hey, maybe try being supportive for once. I stared until the letters blurred not from tears, but from realization. She already believed the house was hers. Then came Marcus's email, 3 long pages, accusations piled on top of each other. Ungrateful, self-centered, dramatic. Buried beneath all the venom was the only sentence that actually mattered. Give up the inheritance. Fix the mess you caused. Be the daughter we expect. I closed the email before reaching the end. Finally, Elaine called, not to apologize, not to check if I was all right. She slipped straight into strategy mode, as if the dinner had simply been a negotiation gone slightly off script. Your father and I don't appreciate the position you've put us in. He didn't mean it, Elaine said, her voice tremoring. You know how he gets when he's stressed. Just sign it, Skylar. This isn't worth tearing the family apart. But the family was already in pieces. I had simply stopped pretending the cracks were decorative patterns in marble. I didn't argue. I didn't explain. I didn't remind her that they burned the greatest thing I had ever earned. I just hung up, then shut my phone off completely. Because only one conversation still mattered. I opened my laptop and typed a short email to Mr. Dalton. It's time, he replied minutes later. Next week. Santa Monica office. They'll all be notified. I set the laptop aside, sank into Aunt Riley's couch, and exhaled. For the first time in my life, I wasn't reacting. I was deciding. The following week passed quietly, a strange contrast to the storm building underneath it. At work, I focused on code reviews and planning meetings, slipping into the part of my life that actually felt solid. In the evenings, I stayed at Aunt Riley's drinking tea, helping her with chores, watching old movies neither of us had seen in years. She never pushed me to talk. She simply stayed near, steady, grounding. Your grandfather saw this coming, she told me one night. He trusted you for a reason. I nodded, though that trust felt like a weight pressing daily against my ribs. When the day finally arrived, I drove to Santa Monica early. The sky was bright, cloudless, almost taunting. I parked in front of the law office, straightened my blazer, and went inside. The lobby smelled faintly of polished wood and citrus cleaner. Mr. Dalton greeted me with a solemn nod. They're on their way. Are you ready? I've been ready for years, I said. We stepped into the conference room together, long table, tall windows, leather chairs stiff enough to discourage comfort. At the center sat a neat stack of documents, the weight of an entire legacy in perfectly bound pages. 5 minutes later, the door opened. Marcus entered first, jaw clenched, eyes hard with indignation. Elaine followed, face pinched like she was bracing for humiliation. Victoria drifted in behind them, sunglasses perched on her head, phone in hand, dressed like this was brunch instead of a legal reading. She froze when she saw me. Seriously? She muttered. You actually think this is going to change anything? I didn't respond. They took their seats across from me, a perfect divide. A perfect metaphor. Mr. Dalton began without preamble. As stated in the official will of Mr. Lawson. The air stilled. Even the room seemed to stop breathing. He read through the formalities, dates, signatures, witnesses, and then the part none of them saw coming. The full estate, including all properties, investments, and business shares, is to be transferred solely to his granddaughter, Skylar Lawson. Elaine's mouth fell open. Victoria's jaw dropped. Marcus jerked forward. That's impossible, he snapped. He promised. No. Mr. Dalton cut in smoothly. He did not. Victoria slammed her palm onto the table. I already put a deposit on a studio space. You can't just... I looked straight at her, steady and unmoving. It's not yours to spend. She shook her head. You don't even like the house. You don't even care about Grandpa's company. She had no clue. She didn't know how many summers I spent watching the company deteriorate under poor leadership. How many nights Grandpa and I sat together reviewing plans for projects he never got to finish. Marcus tried again, leaning into the same force he'd used my entire life. You're too young to handle any of this. You'll destroy everything. Victoria is entitled, I said softly, sharper than any yell. And you taught her to be. Silence flooded the room, thick, uneasy, revealing. Then Mr. Dalton clicked a remote. There is one more thing you all need to see. A video filled the screen. Grandpa sat in his study, frail, but eyes still bright and certain. If you're watching this, he began. It means Skylar kept her word, and stayed silent until the truth could speak for itself. Elaine's hand flew to her mouth. Marcus stared at the screen as if his body had forgotten how to move. Victoria whispered a tiny, broken, no, while my grandfather's voice continued, I watched you downplay her achievements. I watched you praise one child while pretending the other didn't exist. I watched Skylar grow in ways you never bothered to notice. The air thickened. Nobody dared shift. And I am leaving everything to her, he said. Because real strength should be protected, not drained. The video cut off. Silence expanded, heavy and merciless. I stood slowly, my hands resting on the edge of the table. This wasn't revenge, I said. This was justice. And this, I gestured at the stack of finalized contracts, is me choosing myself. Marcus's face collapsed, not with guilt, but with the dawning horror of losing control. Elaine lowered her gaze, tears trembling at the edges. Victoria covered her face, shaking, as the future she expected vanished right in front of her. I gathered the documents Mr. Dalton had passed me, slid them neatly into my folder, and stepped away from the table. You burned my diploma, I told Marcus. But you never managed to burn my future. No one answered. No one even breathed wrong. I walked out of that office into the bright California sun, and for the first time in my life, the warmth felt real. Months drifted by, and the world felt unfamiliar in the best way. Quieter. Softer. Finally mine. I rented a small apartment along the southern edge of San Jose, close enough to bike to the tech district. It wasn't much, but it felt safe, something childhood never gave me. A single framed picture sat on my desk. Me and Grandpa in the backyard, laughing at something only we would remember. Work transformed too. I stepped into a leadership role, rebuilding the company from the inside. No favoritism, no corruption, just real competence. People seemed lighter. Employees who once looked defeated now greeted me with eyes full of hope. My family never reached out, not a call, not a text, not even a message from Victoria, who once couldn't stay quiet for more than an hour. And strangely, I didn't feel their absence. What I felt was peace. A steady, honest peace I had earned myself. At night, I'd stand on my balcony and watch the city glow like distant constellations. My mind wasn't spinning anymore. I wasn't questioning myself or begging for space in someone else's world. I wasn't shrinking to survive. I had finally walked into a life where I didn't need permission to exist. Sometimes I remember that night, the fire, the stillness, the way I walked away without looking back. But standing there with the San Jose breeze on my skin, I finally understood what Grandpa had tried to teach me. Strength doesn't yell, it's choosing yourself even when no one applauds. My family lost their grip the second I stopped seeking their approval. If this story strikes something inside you, share your thoughts in the comments. And subscribe for more real family dramas. You're not alone. Your voice matters here.